Hi, this is Steve from Steve's Camaros, and today I wanted to cover a subject of the Z28 motor in 1967, and in the case of this car, 1968. This was a 302 cubic inch engine rated at 290 horse from the factory. What made this engine unique to other small blocks was it was high performance, so Chevrolet put a high-rise aluminum intake on it. They put a Holley 780 CFM 4-barrel. As you will see, it had unique carburetor fuel feed lines. You had a fuel line coming from the fuel pump up to a brass Y block, and then you had lines feeding the front bowl and lines feeding the rear bowl. All the pulleys on a Z28, all were deep groove pulleys. In the case of this car, the crank pulley is a double. If you had ordered power steering, there would have been an add-on pulley that would have gone out there on the front of the crank pulley to drive the power steering pump pulley. The groove that you see that's not being used would be used for the smog pump. These cars in '68, because of the manual transmission, all had smog pumps. This car doesn't have the smog pump. Another thing that was used with the Z28 was the clutch operated cooling fan. They didn't just have the normal 4-blade fan that a stock small block would have used. These were controlled by temperature, and they called them viscous drive. Another thing you'll notice is that the 67 and 68, because their oil fill tube came into the front of the intake manifold, they couldn't use the standard thermostat housing, so they used a cast iron thermostat housing that had the bend in it so that it would clear the oil fill tube. Another thing that is unique to the 302 is the alternator adjustment bracket, where a normal short water pump small block engine had single bracket, one mounted to the water pump and one to the intake manifold. Because the 302 used this bypass fitting and hoses, you couldn't use the stock brackets, so therefore they created these two brackets. One mounts to the water pump, one mounts to a hole on the intake manifold, and that was used for adjusting the alternator. This car doesn't have power steering, but because of the 8-inch balancer, if it had power steering, it had a special mount support bracket and a special adjustment bracket that would have been unique to SS 350 and 302s that used the 8-inch balancer. The Z28s all came with chrome valve covers, no scripted Chevrolet. That would have been 67 only. And as you can see, some of the wire tower separators on this engine, you can see if you're detailing your own car how they should look. You've got the separators on the lower bolt holes. You've got the separators coming off of the intake manifold. You'll see the special bracket that's on the valve cover where the power brake booster hose goes through. You see how the throttle return spring mounts. It's got its own little bracket. And you can see that the accelerator lever, or the throttle rod, is a 2-piece adjustable rod so that you could have dialed in right where you wanted it to be. All Z28s came with power front disc brakes, the 4-piston caliper style. They all came with a power booster and a dual reservoir master cylinder. And in the case of original ones, they'd have the bleeder screws. Here's what people talk about, the proportioning valve. All the Camaros had the metering switch. but when you had discs in the front, drums in the back, you have the proportioning valve added so that they could meter the fluid properly.
Okay.